Twice, Me+You. Let's talk about it. How y'all doing? Welcome to Let's Talk About It, Music Reviews, Season 11. How y'all doing? Welcome to the show. Guys, we got another K-pop review. It's honestly been a while since I've talked about K-pop. And honestly, we're talking about one of the best K-pop groups out there, guys. One of the groups that I grew up listening to when I was younger. And we've also reviewed on this show for 5+ years at this point, which is fucking insane to say. But, you know, this group right now is turned like 10 years old. This is honestly kind of crazy. Even the music video was recreated from their old MV from, 10 years ago when they debuted. So, kind of crazy. Full circle moment. But honestly, this is probably one of the better full circle moments that I've seen. Because, guys, this song right here, whew, let me tell y'all, when you make an R&B type song, when you put some R&B production, when you put some R&B vocals, when you get all of these elements coming in, that's how you make me really like a song. That's how you really, get me, immediately wanting to give this a high score. So we got Twice. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Now, I like this song because this song doesn't have, the 20 switch-ups. This doesn't have, the jarring switch-ups that Twice used to have back in the day. This is actually, Twice, pretty evolved. This is probably the best form of Twice that you're going to get. The way everything flows together. But let's start talking about this song, Me+You. Let's talk about this beat. I really like this beat. It's nice. I like the 808s here. I like the kind of R&B vibe here. It kind of reminds me of like a 2000s, plus 90s kind of combined beat here. The way that it kind of flows together, which just sounds really good in my opinion. And I also like how you get a switch up. The beat kind of slows down. You get more of those, you get the instrumental really poking out here, really doing its thing. You get more of those synths. You get those background vocals. You get all these different elements that start coming in. I think this is one of the better, Twice beats that I've definitely heard in my opinion. I like all of the elements here. I like the melody. I like that simple piano. It just has a little funk to it. It has a little bit of a personality on its own. And then you got all those moments where, you hear the strings, you hear the violin, you hear everything in this song, which honestly all comes together pretty well. I think it's one of the better beats that I've heard from Twice. Definitely not disappointed at all. And then, you get these verses. You get these verses. And, man, the vocals on these verses are really good in my opinion. The singing is absolutely fucking hidden. Those background vocals that come in. The way they're holding out their notes reminds me of kind of older, R&B songs, which is really fucking awesome. And also, this is a pretty cool song to have for the lyrics and the meaning. This to actually be a positive-ass song. I can't tell y'all how many, R&B songs that come out today that are probably some of the most toxic-ass lyrics that you'll ever hear in your life. This is actually, pretty positive song. Kind of brings you back to more nostalgic-type times, which is pretty cool. And then you got this hook. And I'd say this is a really good Twice hook. Twice always, really has good hooks. But I think this is one of the better hooks that I've heard from Twice. The way the vocals sound, the background vocals, the singing on here is absolutely on point. And then you get those vocal runs that kind of hold out the Me+You, which you hear at the end, which is really fire in my opinion. Adds a lot of value when you're listening to the song. And also, guys, one of the things that really stand out to me too was the switch up. This is one of the best, newer Twice switch ups that I've heard in a long time. I mean, the way it switches to this beat and then the vocals actually switch up with the song. And, you get more of that vocal depth. You get more of that vocal complexity. You get all those switch-ups that make the song just want to keep listening to it over and over and over again, which is really fire in my opinion. And then you get this you get this first vocal switch-up. You're thinking this is all you're going to get from the bridge. This is what you're thinking. You're just going to get this, and then it's going to go right back to the hook. But no, then it switches again, and then you get really powerful vocals. You get really good singing from another Twice member that just absolutely kills it in my opinion, and adds more complexity, adds a really good switch up, and just keeps this song just really looping in your head. This song doesn't get boring at all to listen to. Now, I will say the only thing that could bring this song down, if there is something to bring it down, is the rap verse. Y'all know how I feel about K-pop rapping. I mean, look, it's very hit or miss. Sometimes, it can sound good. Sometimes it can sound painfully bad. And sometimes it can just sound kind of mid. And I will say, to be honest with y'all, the rap verse on here was kind of mid. But it was really short, it was straight to the point. The flow was not the best, in my opinion, the way it sounded on this beat. But, then it quickly switches back to the verse, and then it leads up to the hook. So, this rap verse wasn't anything to really ride home about. Wasn't even that good, honestly. Kind of really basic. But I think it does the job. It's nothing crazy. I'm glad it's short. I'm glad we didn't get, I'm glad we didn't get a couple of rap verses in here. I think this song kind of, works on its own for not needing any of the rap verses in this song. So I think, for a really good R&B type song here, a really good R&B and pop song, this is probably one of the better K-pop songs that I've heard that done that. And, a lot of K-pop songs recently that I've checked out, they try to do this, they try to do this type of sound. I remember that, we covered one of the BTS members. They had a solo song, and they even had an R&B feature on there. But then you listen to the song, and you're kind of like, alright, this is not that good, I've heard way better people do this way fucking better. I mean, brother, what are you even doing on here? I mean, you're going to have this sensual-ass R&B beat, and you're not going to go crazy on it. You're going to rap over it. Like, I've seen this same thing happen over and over and over again, especially when I cover K-pop. But this is actually doing it right. This is actually, having, a good example of that. And look, other K-pop motherfuckers, K-pop groups, whatever, you better goddamn take notes, alright? If you want to do this sound, fucking do it right, alright? And this is how you do it right here. Guys, overall, when we talk about this song twice, Me+You, the R&B beat pop instrumental goes fucking insane. Then you got a really good verses, you got a really good hook. You got nice switch ups, you got nice bridges. The rapping was not the best on here, but it's so short that, it's kind of over before you even hear it. So, not too bad. Guys, this song's really good. And, it's kind of crazy that, guys, we've reviewed twice for over 5+ years. I mean, that's kind of insane to think about. I've been covering this group for a long time. And I'm sure this group's, we've covered a lot of groups on here a long time. But Twice was one of the main ones that I covered all the way back in 2020. Honestly, in 2019 too, So, it's been a long time coming. And, honestly, it's a pretty good song. Me+You, I'm going to have to give this track a 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10, guys. What y'all think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't know. Let me know. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast at, make sure you follow, turn on notifications, guys. And I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.